October meeting. And we have a couple of things to say. The Historical Society basically is run by, not run by, but financed by your membership and contributions. So we have things for sale, and we would appreciate your donations. And after the presentations, there's coffee and cake and those types of things over here, and that's free, so you don't have to pay for that. Okay, the presentation today with Kai is actually financed by the Sudbury Historical Commission, which is different than the Sudbury Historical Society. So Lynn McLean is here, and she knows all about how they got the money and that type of thing. Lynn, you want to just explain to everyone?
I don't know all about the town finances, believe me.
No, CPC funds.
We have CPC funds, which were used for the restoration of the Revolutionary Cemetery. And with the help of Carol Wolf and Jim Hodder, we were able to get it in 3 phases, and phase 1 and phase 2 have been completed, and phase 3 we're hoping will take place in the spring. And also we're hoping to get funds to help restore other cemeteries in town in the future.
Thank you. Okay, with further ado, Kai Nalenz is the founder and owner of Gravestone Services of New England, a company that specializes in the preservation of historic gravestones and monuments. He's in the process of completing, well, he already has completed the 2nd phase. And with further ado, Kai.
Thank you, Joe, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Over the next hour, I am going to take you on a virtual tour of the Revolutionary War Cemetery here in Sudbury, and you will learn what types of stone we have out here, how to identify them, what kinds of monuments we have, and what kind of challenges we face preserving these stones. And of course, you're going to learn a little bit about the symbols we have on there, kind of like the ones we have along the wall, with a different reading, I hope. But first, I would like to thank Carol Wolf for initiating this preservation project. It must have been a great job, a big challenge. And I also want to thank Jim Hodder for his great support throughout the preservation project here. And Lee Swanson for inviting me, and both the members of the Historical Commission and the Historical Society. And as you just heard, I just completed the 2nd phase of the preservation project. I just completed last Friday, actually. And we have preserved over 100 gravestones since July. And although the weather was not always on my side, in July it was very hot and very humid, making it difficult. In August we had those bad thunderstorms rolling through. But it was just such a pleasure doing this project. The cemetery is full of not just local, but actual national history. We have such heroes in there as Lieutenant Haynes, the first casualty in Concord, and another very brave young man that sticks to my mind, Jonathan Bend. He was just 15 years old when he went out on April 19, 1775 to face the mightiest army of its time. And luckily he did not die there. He lived to be 65 years old. And all these souls out there, they're remembered by their gravestones. And it is really such a pleasure to me to be part of it and preserving the memory of these people out there. And before we get to the gravestones, I want to take a moment to explain what type of stones we have out there. I'll start with the oldest ones, the sandstones. Those are the stones that were mostly used in the 1600s. This is actually from 1821. And they actually derive from sand. And the coloring is very much like that of sand. We have dark ones, a brownish one like this, which is actually the more popular color. And just like sand, they fall apart very easily, as you can tell here. And we have all these bubbles here. The face of the stone is coming off. Unfortunately, it's the nature of the material they're made of. The next one is slates. Those were used in the 1700s to the 1800s. And this lady is actually buried right over there, Elizabeth Taylor. And what is slate? For slate, we have to go back a few million years when lava still flowed over the surface of our planet. And we had clay deposits, superheated clay deposits mixing with ash, and then it dried in layers. And the slate we can actually harvest in slabs. They're literally layers like a bunch of pieces of paper stacked together. That's what slate looks like. And this also, because it is in layers, causes significant damage to the stone, but we will get to that later on. Next we have marble. Marble is a sedimentary rock which is composed of things like seashells that deposited millions of years ago on the sea floor. And the oceans dried up, and now we can harvest this stone. And depending on the decay, you can actually feel, when you go over, you feel sand. That's this is a stone that's in a pretty good shape. It's not deteriorated too bad, and those were used mostly in the 1800s up to the early 1900s, these stones. And then we had granite starting in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And granite also comes in a great variety of colors, anywhere from this berry granite, black and white, through pink. We have black, we have red granites. And nowadays, they are polished and engraved using laser technologies. But we still have.
Is that Mount Hope Cemetery in Barry, Vermont?
This is the Hope Cemetery in Barry, Vermont, yes. And there's actually a sad story behind that stone as well. The woman to the left, she was terminally ill, and her husband promised her that they will be together for eternity. And he had this beautiful monument set up for her. And shortly after she passed away, he moved out of state and remarried another woman, and he is buried with her. So she is all alone in there. And granite is actually a stone. It really holds up well to the weather, but because of its hardness, it comes very close to that of a diamond. But still, we have to be very careful working with these stones, cleaning them. All my cleanings are done by hand. If you use a pressure washer on this, you might actually splinter some of the lettering off. So even with the granite, you have to be very gentle to them. Next, I want to explain some of the forms of gravestones we have out there. The slate stones, pretty much all of them are set as an upright slab stone. What that means is there's no base. It's almost like an iceberg. On this particular stone, we have 2.5 feet underground of this stone. And the way they were set back then was not all these rocks we have out there on the wall were used for the wall. We actually have them in the ground too. They were wedged in to hold the stone up, and then it was just backfilled with soil, and that's the same technique I use today. Another one is a stele gravestone. This derives from Greek, and stele is a slab that is longer than it is wide, and it most often has inscriptions and carvings on it. And they're made out of at least 3 pieces. The first one is the plinth, which is the piece that touches the bottom. Next, we have the pedestal. In this case, we only have one pedestal, but there is not really a limit to it. We have some monuments that kind of look like a Mayan pyramid. You have pedestal after pedestal. And then finally, we have the stele gravestone. And out in this cemetery, you also have a few obelisks. And again, we have at the bottom our plinth, then the pedestal, and then the tall obelisk. And in most cases, these actually have carvings on all four sides. They were oftentimes used for families. This is for the Smith family, and we have the children and the parents on all four sides. Next, a first look at what I first saw when I came out at the Revolutionary Cemetery, and those pictures would actually speak for themselves. Now, what causes this kind of damage? There are a number of factors that can harm a stone. Unfortunately, one of the big ones nowadays is vandalism. This is a cemetery right outside of Boston, and 80 to 90% of the cemetery was destroyed by vandals. It was a very sad sight, and the town is looking into getting that done, but this would probably take almost a lifetime to fix that damage. Another one is weather. This is a picture from Cape Cod, Brewster, Cape Cod. What happened in that cemetery was a microburst came through. It was just straight wind, and it broke these stones right off. And it also caused trees to fall over and flinging stones up in the air. And yeah, it was a significant damage that was caused by that microburst. Another one is delamination, which also goes along with weather. This is a slate stone, and as you can see, there we have those layers. Unfortunately, we already lost the top portion, and if you look close enough, if you go out into the cemetery, you look close enough, there's still some of the carving visible up here. That's why we decided not to rebuild the stone. The reason why it coincides with weather, we have water penetrating those layers, and in the winter it freezes, and it just separates the stones. Pretty much the same technique they used to quarry granite. They would drill a hole in the winter, pour water in, overnight it would freeze and split the stone right off. Another one is pollution. This is a marble stone, and it is so severely deteriorated. You can actually see all those veins in here, and it is very grainy. If you touch that stone, you have sand in your fingers. And I did try an adhesive repair, but it was just not possible on this stone. And I forgot to mention the color of marble. It is usually white, but we also have gray veins going through it. But nowadays, if you look at a cemetery, you might see a stone. It is a marble, but it's actually black. This is lichen. And we are able to clean most of that off and get it back to a white or very light gray, that stone. Trees and roots. That one I actually had to take a souvenir from. It was a 4.5-inch thick root that grew under the stone, the indentation here. That's what pushed the stone upwards. So the stone started to tilt this way from this big root, and then we have that smaller root right in front of it. That pushed it forward. Now the tree was long gone, the roots were still in there, so I extracted the stone, removed the roots, and reset it in its location. But yeah, it was quite the struggle to get those out. Shifting soil. The Revolutionary War Cemetery, we just have about a 2-inch layer of topsoil, and then it's sand underneath for most part. And just like a dune at the beach or in the desert, but a lot slower, that soil starts shifting. And if the stone is not supported properly, it starts tilting over, and eventually it either breaks, depending on the height, or it just falls down. This becomes more and more an issue. Failed previous repairs. About 15, 20 years ago, we used an epoxy that was not made to withstand UV light, sunlight, and also the temperature range. It could not hold up to our New England weather. Plus the stone, this is slightly gray, so if that gets hit with the sun, it heats up to 120 degrees. And in the winter, it goes down to sub-zero temperatures, and it just fails that adhesive. And the stone falls over, and I would actually take this off, use a new high-tech epoxy that will hold up to sunlight and that will hold up to the temperature change, and put it back together. Lawn care equipment, another big one. I mean, in this case, we just have scratches on it. I've seen chunks knocked out of gravestones, and even a 3-foot gravestone run over by a lawn tractor. I'm not quite sure, to be honest, how you can miss that, but what are my preservation methods? And if you notice, fortunately it's a little over to the left, I use the word preservation and not a restoration. And the reason is a restoration, as defined in my dictionary, is a putting or bringing back into a former normal or unimpaired state or condition. These stones are 200-300 years old, and it would be historically incorrect, based on most historians and my own opinion as well, to bring them back to new. I mean, we're kind of proud of our wrinkles, our gray hair. We earned that. So. And that's why we preserve those stones. Preserving is an occurrence of improvement by virtue of preventing loss, injury, or any other change. And conservation is just a synonym of that. So that's why we use the term preservation. We preserve the stone, we keep what we have for future generations, and the first objective is always do no harm. If we're not sure how to save a stone, we secure it and we don't cause any further damage to the stone. One of the main causes we have for damage is the shifting soil or tree roots causing stones to tilt. And I come in and I realign and level the stone. In this case, I actually dug up the stone, prepared the hole, and I set it back in and used one of the tools I always get laughed at, a level. It is very important to me to make sure that this stone is upright, level, and plumb, because if it's just tilted again, it's going to start over time to do this again. Plus, we don't want any water to pool on the surface of the stone, eroding it even more. And I use, on this one, does anyone remember what form of stone that is? Yes, it's a slate and it's a slab stone. So on this one, I actually use the old methods, those big boulders, to reset that. Another one is adhesive repair. And in this case, I actually had to do 2 adhesive repairs. One, the base. This is a granite base. And then the stone itself. And any cracks, oops, sorry. Wait a few seconds. There we go. Any space we had, I use a high-tech mortar, which has pretty much the same composition as the stone I'm working on. So I have different mortars for different stones. I have one for slate, one for granite, one for marble. And the reason for that is we want the mortar to fail before the stone does. And if I have something that is too hard, the stone will not be able to contract and expand, and then the stone will fail. And we don't want that. We don't want to, as I said, do no harm to the stone. The next one is an injection grout. This is the delaminated stone. And in order for me to prevent any further water to get in there, I use a high-tech, again, high-tech ejection grout, which gets applied by a syringe and a needle. It's that fine, and it really flows anywhere where water is. Now, I did not stain this yet. It comes in the color white, and I can then stain it to blend in after I'm done. In a couple of weeks with this, you will really have to go up very closely to see where I did my repair. And now, all of this is sealed off. Water will not be able to penetrate that stone this winter, and we have a pretty good chance of preserving the remaining part of that stone. And that's the one where I had mentioned earlier. We still have some inscription up here. Now, there are methods to rebuild that, the surface, but we wanted to preserve what we had left. Resetting on its existing base. This is a stele stone where we have the plinth down here, the pedestal, and then the stele stone. The reason why this one fell over is they were set with layers of mortar. And over time, that mortar deteriorated, it washed away. And the big issue are these metal pins. It's a ferrous metal, it's iron. And once the mortar washes away, water will be able to penetrate, rust away that pin. And in this case, we were lucky we don't have any rust stains on the front of the stone. And now water gets in, it freezes, and we lost this entire corner due to that. And what I do is I start out removing the metal pins, and I seal those holes with that high-tech mortar, and then I reset it. Now, there's still folks out there, monument setters, who use lead shims and a monument setting compound, which is very much like a window putty, but it only lasts 10, 15 years, then it deteriorates, and we have the same issues again. I use my epoxy, and I create a seal all the way around so that water cannot penetrate. Now, the pedestal is secured to the plinth, and then finally the stele stone is secured to the pedestal using that same method. And that missing corner, this will probably be part of our phase 3, where we'll then use my my restoration mortar and rebuild that corner to fill it in. Reconstructing. This is a stone up in New Hampshire. It started out as just an adhesive repair, but once I did my dry fit, which I always do first before I put the epoxy on, I want to make sure that it actually fits. Once I put it on, I noticed that we were missing quite a bit of material right along where the lettering is. And this is a very elaborate way of spelling August. Henry died August 27, 1861. And it was important to me to keep that elaborate carving. So I applied my restoration mortar to it, and then I used pottery tools to very carefully recarve the lettering. And I was lucky at the bottom piece, we still had some of the original lettering, kind of giving me a guide of how far I had to go out and how far I had to go down, how deep, and so on. And we were able to preserve this, and this again will be stained next spring to more closely match the original stone. Next up, relocating. Unlike this case, we cannot always just remove the roots and put the stone back to where it belongs. So what did I do in this case? I took all the determination I could find, and I started digging. It took me a good 2.5 hours to free the stone from all the soil. And then I had to use a saw to very, very carefully cut into the roots and finally free the stone from the tree. And then I removed the roots from the tree. Unfortunately, there are still some markings on it, but the stone itself did not get damaged, and the tree is still standing too, going on 2 years now. And I have to relocate the stone. And it is very important, because the stone was there before the tree, and the stone will probably be there long after the tree is gone. So it is very important to keep a record of where the stone is moved to. In this case, it's 10 feet back and 12 feet to the left. I had to find a spot where it was not in danger of any tree branches to fall down onto it, and where there are no further roots for it. And now we gave Henry a new home, and maybe my great-great-grandchildren will be able to move him back home. And another one, this is in Brewstone, Cape Cod, in that same town. Speaking of weather, I had a young fellow, Frederick. He only lived to be 11 years, 9 months. He was affected by that microburst as well, and I had to relocate the stone because his stone was flung up by the falling tree. And when I got there, the stump was still in the ground, so I moved him back 10 feet. Now this year, the stump was gone, and I brought him back home and put him where he belongs. And the reason why I know, the reason how I know that I found the right spot is I actually found a piece of his casket, so which I buried with him again. Preserving. As I said, do no harm. In this case, it was my intention to do an adhesive repair to put this stone back together, but it was not possible. We were missing too many pieces. There were quite a few fragments, and the stone used to be 1.5 inches thick, but some of the bigger pieces were now down to 1/4 inch. This is actually right up on the street, and to me it looks like this stone got damaged in a car accident. The big granite piece on the wall slid over, and to cause such extensive damage, I mean, this was not vandalism. And if you take a look at this piece on the next slide, I was able to raise it up, and now we have the entire epitaph of that stone. That is visible again. And because I was not able to repair the stone, I staggered it. The bottom piece first, then what would have been the middle next, and finally the top piece. And all these fragments I buried 12 inches down to be clear of frost if anything comes in, and also if anyone steps on it or anything else happens, those pieces are secured. It's all recorded, and hopefully in 10, 15, 20, 30 years we will have a technique to put that stone back together. I mean, 30 years ago it was perfectly acceptable to take a broken stone, put a big cement collar around it, and re-adhere them. Today we just say, oh my God, what did they do? So again, do no harm. We preserved it, and my hope is it is such a beautiful stone. If you go out, the one right next to it is very similar in design. It's such an elaborate carving on it, and it would be great if we could put this back together one day. Cleaning. Not only can we not read anything on this stone, this stuff, lichen, it will actually eat away from the surface of the stone. It will harm the stone itself because it penetrates the pores, even on a slate, which is not very porous, but it can penetrate the stone and eat away from the surface. What do? As I said, I do not use any pressure washers. I mean, these stones are so sensitive, and I could cause so much damage with this. I use a soft bristle brush, water, an antimicrobial solution, and a lot of elbow grease. That again was almost 3 hours of scrubbing. But now we can see the motives on here. We can see all the writing. And if you look at these spots, the black spots here, that is the damage caused by the lichen. That's where it started eating away the surface of the stone. And here's some of the tools I use. These are my soft bristle brushes. I also use some wooden sticks to really get into the lettering and remove any lichen that's in there. This is my antimicrobial solution. It's called D2, made by Simply Green. So it's biodegradable, it's non-toxic, because at the end of the day I would like to go home to my family and touch my almost 2-year-old son without burning him. These are some of the masonry tools I use. This is my epoxy. It's made by 3M. And I had mentioned something about the strength. It actually has a peel and shear strength. So shear going this way, and peel going forward of 2 tons per square inch. And, but yet it is flexible enough for my pieces to move, because it's so important for those stones to be able to contract and expand, or else the repair will fail and we cause additional damage to this. And I just had a big test of my epoxy down in Cape Cod. I did an adhesive repair on 2 very large marbles. 48 hours later, Hannah came in with 50 mile per hour winds, knocked down trees in that cemeteries. My stones are still standing. These are clamps I use to support the stones while my epoxy or the mortar cures. And the drill I have to use to get those metal pins out. And this is just my recording equipment. I have a high resolution digital camera and a voice recorder. And the reason why I use that is based on my handwriting. I should have been a surgeon. I can't read it myself. Once we're done with all our repairs and preservation and the cleanings, we record the stone. And it is very important to record the name, the number of graves. We actually have up to 3 folks in one grave out there. We have 1 triple stone. So we want to make sure we have this, the relationship, if it's husband or wife off, if we see that on the stone, the death date, the age, and back in the colonial times, most often they did not put down the birth date, but sometimes they were kind enough to put the death date, how many years, how many months, and how many days that person lived. So we can just backtrack it that way. And we also record the epitaph, and it is very important to do it the same way it is on the stone. If a letter is capitalized, we capitalize it. And we try to keep the alignment of the writing the same way it would be on the stone. And we record the material, the condition, if there was delamination on a slate, and so on. And we also keep record of the dimensions, because we have some stones out there that used to be upwards to 7 feet tall. Now they're reduced to 5 because they're broken, and we currently cannot put them back together. So it's very important to keep that and any additional notes. And we also keep a before and after picture. Now this is Catherine Johnson. She is actually in the first row. And when I first got there and looked at her, I thought, something's wrong here, Catherine. That's not your real home. And she was right up against the wall, not lined up in a slight angle like the other stones. So I took a big long probe, started probing around, and the probe sunk in, and then I found a spot where there were rocks. And that's how I knew I found the actual home of Catherine, because these rocks indicated the old location, the old method. As I had said, they wedged the stone in, and I am not sure why it was moved, but someone took her out and put her up against the wall, and I brought her back home. The symbols. Before we get to that, I just want to explain real quick what we have on these on these old slate stones, what they're composed of. We start with this half round up here called the tympanium. Next we have the shoulder. Looks just like a shoulder. Then we have the side border, which most often had a floral design on it, and we get into that in a little bit what that means. And then finally we have the tablet, the actual inscription on it. But what do they really mean, all these skulls? When I first came to Salem, Mass, and I saw these gravestones before I started doing this work, I thought, that's kind of morbid. Do you have a skull on there? And then I did research. The winged skull, it means the soul is ascending to heaven. And in this case, we also have a little sun up here, which stands for life everlasting. Then we have, this is a very early form of just a skull, and it means mortality. And we also have flowers up here, which is the fragility of life. It was oftentimes used for children, and unfortunately we have quite a few out there in the Revolutionary War Cemetery, quite a few very young children. The winged angel, it stands for rebirth or resurrection. And then we have the garland going around, which stands for victory, in this case a victory over death. This is a portrait. Now, I'm pretty sure that Hannah was a lot prettier than this. But I mean, this almost looks like something we would expect to see in Area 51, some alien that came down. But it also is kind of like a Picasso. Now, these portraits were very simple and did not really reflect the person, but they stand for the soul of the deceased. Next we have, unfortunately it's slid over, this is an urn. The urn stands for immortality, and there are different versions of that urn. It can be, as in this case, with a wreath or a creep, and then it stands for mourning. And I have a little handout later on going a little more into the details of what all these symbols mean, and there's also additional information on, if you're interested, on how to obtain books about this. The columns, the entrance to heaven. This is a beautiful stone of John Maynard. It's a pretty large stone. If you want to look at it, it's up towards Concord Road, and you can't miss it. It's one of the largest stones out there. Elizabeth Taylor again. She has the weeping willow tree, which stands for mourning, grief, and nature's lament. And John Jones, he has a hand pointing up, pointing into heaven. Now there's also a hand pointing down on some gravestones. This does not mean he's going straight to hell. No, it is. This is actually the Lord's hand pointing down to the soul. Next we have a Bible or a book, which was most commonly used on ministers or clergymen, but also for very devoted religious people. And we have two stones. It's the Dutton family. They're very close to the church over here, one of the first rows. And both of these stones were laying down when I came here, and I was able to reset both of them. Who did the work? Unfortunately, it is very difficult to find out who did the carvings, because the local carver they didn't put their name on there. They didn't sign the stone. It was their home, their backyard cemetery. They only signed very elaborate stones or stones they made for the next town over. I found one stone where we have W and then Sudbury. That's the only indication of a carver I was able to find on the actual stone here. And on that same stone, we also have some test carvings. We have the number 22, and then they tried to make a few lines here. So, yeah, unfortunately, not too many records I could find about the actual carvers who worked during that time period in Sudbury. But speaking of these test carvings, there were quite a few interesting finds I had in this cemetery. This is a footstone for Miss Smith, and this to me almost looks like we had an apprentice doing the work. The depth of these letters varies quite a bit, and the shape is not uniform. We have huge chunks missing. So to me, it looks almost like an apprentice did a shot at this, and then they got the order for the actual gravestone, just flipped it around, took the piece that looked nice, and the master himself did the work, and the test carvings went below ground. And oftentimes, this was a stone that was broken, and we had lost the entire epitaph down here, this part. It was all below ground. And when I got to the stone, I extracted it, and we were now able to record this epitaph, and it's going into the report I'm going to create over the winter. And I believe, yes, we were actually able to put this one back together to do an adhesive repair on this one. This is one of the rocks I had mentioned, the slab stones that were secured with. This is just one of them. And based on my back pain, I think it was around 80 pounds. And these are all the rocks that supported that one stone. And this, again, is right up by the street. And as I was working there, a cement truck went by, and you could feel the soil shaking. And I believe the stone was so well secured in there that it could not really withstand the vibration of those trucks going by day in and day out. And eventually it just snapped and broke off.
What is the name on it?
I believe that should be Astor Hill Balcom. And again, it's the 6th row in if you start at the church, and then right up by the street. This is my best friend. My lifting capacity ends at around 200 pounds. And my tripod can do 10 times as much. It has a capacity of 2,000 pounds, 1 ton. And it is a great help in resetting stones, sometimes extracting them. If you remember the stone I had to preserve, I had to stagger those pieces. The bottom piece, I could not lift it out. It was in there so well secured. I actually had to use the tripod and very gently lift it out of the soil. And it's extendable. It goes up to over 11 feet. But it also means I can't really work during a thunderstorm with it. Not sure if you read the newspaper article, but that's the little fellow that get my heart rate up quite a bit. How many of you remember that story of what happened? I was working on one of the stones, and I had to prepare the hole for the stone to be reset. It was very hot. It was over 120 degrees in the sun that day, and I just needed to take a little break. And I had removed my shovel from the hole. I was standing there catching my breath, and I looked down and I see the soil moving. Something was trying to come out. Whoa! And out came that little fellow. And he did a great job. I mean, he got my heart rate up from 60 to 150 in 2 seconds. And it wasn't enough to do that. He got me later on again. I had to get some more gravel, and he jumped right out of my gravel pit and said, "Not again." So, yeah, I had to take a picture of him. I did not try to kiss it and see if there was a princess buried somewhere. But yeah, that was my summer in Sudbury, and I just want to say thank you to all the citizens of Sudbury for really supporting this and making it possible with your generous support for the Historical Society and Commission to set up this project. And Ben Franklin once said that he can tell the character of a town by the way their cemeteries looked, and I am sure he would be so proud of Sudbury. Thank you very much. If you would be so kind to step over to that microphone with any questions you might have.
Are the stones currently made so that the water doesn't seep down and rot out the pedestal to the gravestone? You said that after a while, after 15 years,
Yes.
water will seep in. Do they do that today so that doesn't happen?
What I do is I create a seal with that epoxy. It is a watertight seal, so water will not be able to penetrate under there. And
The usual people who do stones today?
no, most other folks, they still use the lead wedges and the monument setting compound. And with that, it will fail after a few years. For now, it will create a water seal, just like window putty, but it doesn't last very long.
Excuse me. The reason we ask you to use the microphone is this is being recorded, and if you don't use the microphone, the questions get lost. Okay.
You have a very interesting profession. I'm curious to find out how you got started in this and when.
I was born in Germany, and my great-grandfather donated a lot of land to our church so they could build a cemetery, and we therefore have an 18-grave plot. And I believe it was age 10, at least that's how far back I can remember. I went out with my mother at least once a month in the spring and fall, twice a month, to take care of our gravesite. So at a very early age, I developed an interest for this. And when I came over here, I saw all these beautiful historic cemeteries, and they needed a lot of work. Now, being from Germany, you would expect me to have all these historic cemeteries at home, but we actually don't. The way it is set up in Germany, nowadays you purchase your plot for a number of years, 10, 15, 20 years, and if you don't repurchase it, the grave will be leveled eventually, and then over time, the next person goes on it. We don't have vaults around them, so it's just the casket. It is very common that after 3, 4 years, the grave will cave in. Just put more soil on it. It just means the casket has rotted away, and that's why we do have old graves, just not to the extent we have over here. So once I saw these old cemeteries and really developed a great interest in it, I did some research online. And eventually, I was so fortunate to work with Fred Oakley from the Association of Gravestone Studies. They're based out in Western Mass. And he is one of the most renowned conservators in the country. And he taught me so much. But I still continue doing research and educating myself. In November, I'm going up to Canada to be trained on ground-penetrating radar.
On what?
Ground-penetrating radar. So if there's a stone missing, we know there was a grave. We can actually make sure that there really was one. And my good friend Fred, this year he decided to retire. I'm not sure why, he's only 86. So but yeah, that's how I got started. And
Anyone else?
With regard to setting the stones, were some of the stones deliberately set flat over the graves at all in the early days? And if so, was there a special purpose for that, or?
We did have in the 1600s, we had stones that were deliberately set flat. They were called table stones. Mm-hmm. This is actually a technique that came over from England, and this was really done up to 1650, around that time, and most of them were sandstones, and unfortunately we pretty much lost all of the lettering, the carving on those stones. But yes, there are some stones that are like this, and we had one stone out here. I just repaired it last week, so I didn't have an updated picture on this. It's for a member of the Goodnow family, Samuel Goodnow. It was laying flat for a number of years, and it looked like it was laid flat deliberately. It was a very tall, almost 7-foot slate slab stone, and over time it had broken into 2 pieces, and instead I was just able to repair that stone and finished it up last Friday.
I know in England in the Victorian times some graves had a large slab put on them to prevent grave robbing. Yep. And I heard there's a theory here that in the early days the slabs were put down to prevent wolves from digging up the graves. Do you know if there's any truth to that at all?
We actually have right out here in the first row. I had to reset a stone last week, and I had to move that because they had put enormous granite boulders right over where the casket was. So I believe it was for that same purpose, that either no grave robbery could take place or that animals couldn't get to that grave site. But those rocks were too large for me to move.
Anyone else?
Whereabouts exactly were you? Are you right next to the Presbyterian Church, or up on the hill, or?
I was right over at the church here.
I'm not sure what that is. That's right. That's the one right here. That's the Presbyterian Church.
Okay, anyone else?
That grave that you said, the stone was all in pieces and you buried it, hoping that in 15 years or so you'd be able to maybe restore it somehow. Is there any flat marker on top of where that is so they'll know it's there, or is there just written records to say that you did that?
You mean the pieces that are buried?
The pieces that you buried.
There is just the written record for it, but we did save, I did put the stones up, as you saw, staggered, and there's not a whole lot of space in between.
No.
And the reason is that nobody would be able to get in there with a lawnmower and cause any more damage. Yeah. So they're stacked very closely, and it's just that written record about it. Oh. I think we had a question from our young friend up here.
Kai, one question too. These records, where are they kept?
They will be kept with the Historical Society. It's a report I'm going to put together over the winter.
Oh, we keep them? Okay. The commission?
Commission.
Okay, commission will have them.
All right.
Okay.
How many years does it take to build a gravestone?
To make a gravestone? Depending on how elaborate the stone is. We have huge mausoleums. Those take several years to build, but a regular stone like this, I believe it would only have taken a couple of weeks to do the carving. My father-in-law actually, he still makes gravestones up in Vermont, and he gets it done in about a week, a stone, but they have different techniques nowadays. They are sandblasted. And his company, they only deal with berry granite. They're very proud of their granite up there.
Yeah, another question here. Did your work involve restoration of any of the carvings or the writing on the gravestones?
I did one stone on Friday where I actually had to recarve the floral border on one of the stones.
I was thinking that would be beneficial to do because over time the inscriptions go away due to the weather, so I didn't know whether you did any repairs of that type.
Only if we are really missing a piece, like that one stone where I did the reconstruction, only if we are missing a piece. I do not go ahead and recarve the existing lettering.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Was there anyone else? No. I just wanted to speak about two books that we happen to have on the back table. If you're interested, you could pick up one of these for $5. It's a list of persons that are buried over there. It isn't complete. There are some mistakes, but it was done back in 1925, and it's only $5. And then we have the We Shall Not Tamely Give It Up. They were a gift from the Historic Commission, and they are also only $5. The John Powers book, and it's actually very well researched. I'm reading it again. I haven't read it for years. I hadn't read it, and it's actually very well documented.
Are there any other questions? Lynn has one. Just a minute.
I just wanted to say that the marker that the DAR put on Water Row, the Haynes Garrison site, we are having that, the carving in that stone, the black lettering, so you can read it. Also, we've had a stone cleaned on Old County Road, which is the old soldiers' training field, and you will see that that has been restored.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much, Kai.
I just want to say... And as I said, I